Russian air assault forces attacked the Ukrainian garrison in western Russia's Kursk Oblast on, or just before Saturday, rolling 8 BMD infantry fighting vehicles along the very same roads, around the village of Viktorovka, they've been using since November for assaults on the 250-square-mile salient the Ukrainians carved out of Kursk back in August. The result was predictable. Ukrainian forces anchored by the 22nd Mechanized Brigade and 17th Heavy Mechanized Brigade destroyed 4 of the 8 BMDs from the Russian 234th Air Assault Regiment. I really do not understand the point of attacking at the place where they attack for the third month, mused Kriegsforscher, a Ukrainian Marine Corps drone operator whose company knocked out one of the BMDs. The repeated vehicular assaults along the same roads by the same Russian regiments, almost all ending in defeat for the Russians, are equally befuddling to the Russian rank and file. In sending vehicles and their crews on pointless banzai attacks across the drone-patrolled no-man's land in Kursk, Russian commanders gain almost nothing and lose everything, according to one Russian blogger. These stubborn commanders are geniuses, the blogger wrote sarcastically. The predictable and costly assaults help explain the staggering Russian casualties in Kursk as Russia's wider war grinds toward its 4th year. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the 60,000-person Russian North Korean field army in Kursk has suffered as many as 35,000 casualties trying to eject the 20,000 Ukrainians, the Oblast. The Russian counteroffensive in Kursk, that began in earnest in November, has shrunk, but not eliminated, the Ukrainian-held salient. Russian President Vladimir Putin keeps pushing back the deadline for his forces to fully recapture Kursk. After several revisions amid the overall failure of Russian attacks in the Oblast, last fall, the Kremlin extended the deadline to February, only to later abandon that deadline too. Don't be shocked if the Russians miss whatever the new deadline is. Saturday was a typical day along the Kursk front line. Russian and North Korean troops attacked from 16 directions, according to the Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies. Just one attack resulted in any Russian gains around Viktorovka. But the Ukrainian 6th Ranger Regiment still controls most of the village. Bloodied and surely traumatized, some Russian troops in Kursk once again are resorting to brutal war crimes as a way of venting their frustration, and they must hope, terrorizing their Ukrainian foes. Marines from the Russian 155th Naval Infantry Brigade, one of 2 Russian Marine brigades that have been destroyed and rebuilt several times in the 35 months since Russia widened its war on Ukraine, reportedly decapitated 4 Ukrainian prisoners and displayed the heads on pikes. If history is any guide, the Russians' crimes will fail to demoralize the Ukrainians. Indeed, they tend to have the opposite effect. When the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade stripped and executed 9 Ukrainian prisoners in October, it triggered a series of deadly raids by Ukrainian troops, deliberately targeting the Russian brigade. Meanwhile, the FPV drone operators of the 414th Separate Brigade destroyed a rare Russian 120mm self-propelled artillery and mortar system, 2 S-23 Nona SVK, in the Donetsk region. A video of the enemy's self-propelled artillery system was posted by Brigade Commander Robert Brovdy, also known by his call sign Magyar. The invaders' Nona SVK was discovered on the road near the railroad and destroyed using an FPV drone. The first hit stopped the vehicle and sparked a fire, which later made the ammunition detonate. Analysts from the channel War in Ukraine, Equipment Losses determined that the artillery system had been destroyed near the village of Zhovte. the Donetsk region, in the Pokrovsk sector. In addition to the Nona SVK, the video also shows the destruction of 3 tanks, 4 armored personnel carriers, 1 armored vehicle, and damage to 4 artillery pieces by a unit of the 414 Separate Brigade in cooperation with adjacent units. It is also reported that in just 1 day in that section of the front line, the Magyar's birds had destroyed 29 vehicles that provided logistics for Russian troops. Two S-23 Nona SVK is a 120mm battalion self-propelled artillery and mortar system on the BTR-80 chassis. Its main weapon is the 2 A61 20mm rifled howitzer mortar gun, which is a modified version of the 2 A51 gun and is mounted on the 2 S9 Nona S self-propelled artillery system. Additionally, the Nona SVK is equipped with a 7.62mm PKT machine gun mounted on the turret of the self-propelled artillery system commander.